Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Since we had so much fun with the Scams of Sean Kingston video, and because the grifting, the scamming, the tomfoolery never stops, today I want to talk about Akon. Maybe it's because I was so young during his peak. I was about elementary, middle school age, but it seemed like in those subsequent years, Akon gained his reputation as like this real-life Tony Stark who left the lecherous Western music industry to go rebuild Africa and to like actually do some real good and help people out. We will get into some other things, but the main focus of today's video is going to be Akon's futuristic Akon City likened to a real-life Wakanda. Obviously it didn't happen, but I remember hearing about it vaguely years ago and being like, okay, not happening. And I just got word, not me acting like they told me personally, but I just saw online that the Wakanda City is officially scrapped. So that's being said, let's get into Akon, get into some of the little Akon mini grifts, and then get into Akon City. As I mentioned, Akon, musical icon, he is Senegalese American, born in St. Louis as Alert Akon. Though his full name, it is much longer. I've seen it a few times before, not that I have it memorized.
Hold on. Go ahead. Because I'm looking at it, yes.
Okay. Aliyunda malabaga time putunda kalulu badara Akon cham.
Break it down. Alrighty. Now, all
What
right.
does it mean?
Well, that's the thing. In certain cultures, the second son of the oldest son always get named by the uncle. So everybody gives you a name as the generations go forward.
Wow.
But I was curious to see if Akon was a middle name or a last name, you know, since naming conventions are different. And Akon seems to be a middle name, and several outlets just refer to him as Alert Akon whenever they're using a full name of Akon's. But anyway, rapper, singer, producer, you've definitely heard an Akon song.
And I get locked up, they won't let me out. They won't let me out.
If not one of his own, like Locked Up, I Wanna Love You, Smack That, Beautiful, Lonely, then definitely one that he's featured on, like Gwen Stefani's Sweet Escape, T-Pain's Bartender, or David Guetta's Sexy Bitch, also known as Sexy Chick.
I wanna meet her. They say she low down.
If it's not obvious, Akon's 2000s run was something nasty. I feel like most, if not all of his songs, definitely the collabs, they've trended on TikTok or Instagram over the past couple years or so. Soul Survivor is actually trending right now on Instagram, at the least that I know of.
But if you looking for me, I'll be on the platinum thing. Possibly sitting on a track now.
And this is a Jeezy song, but it's Akon's opening that's actually trending. And in total, Akon's got 2 number ones on the Hot 100, 13 top 10s, and he's featured on over 20 other Hot 100 entries. In 2004, Akon founded his label Convict Music.
Convict music.
And later in 2007, he started Con Live Distribution. Through the label, he signed acts like Lady Gaga, T-Pain, Cardinal Official, and French Montana, among others.
How'd you guys hook up?
I met her as a writer.
Okay.
You know, I was producing with Red One, and she's an incredible writer. So they teamed us together to actually do records together. And it was actually in LA.
It was an LA record plant.
We was working on some records for the Pussycat Dolls.
The Convict thing wasn't just a play on Akon's name, but also a nod to his supposedly checkered criminal past. He has been to jail, but he's also been accused of embellishing the details of his arrest, probably, you know, for clout street cred. In 2008, after his official rap sheet was revealed and circulating, the New York Times reported, although he claims to have spent more than 4 years in prison and says his crimes include leading an extensive car theft ring, the only felony conviction among his 6 arrests was for gun possession, for which he received 3 years probation, the Smoking Gun reported. And while Akon, who titled his second album Convicted, was arrested in 1998 for possession of a stolen BMW and was held for several months in jail, all charges were dropped and he was released, according to the website. Akon's representatives at Universal Motown, his label, did not respond to requests for comments. I'm giving all of these stats and figures and numbers, one, because I know we're at the time where some of y'all may not be familiar with Akon. Since he hasn't put out any 2000s level hits recently, I honestly don't even know if he's still making music. But to also establish why a lot of people assume Akon had it like that. So people weren't really questioning how he was throwing his money around, giving it to all of these efforts, charities, things like that. Also, at this time, we kind of just assumed all the music industry figures in the 2000s had it like that, albeit there was definitely more money to be had in the music industry back then. But I also wanted to make the point, Akon wasn't just this artist with one hit album, he was also collaborating with popular artists, signing others, so, you know, getting the money several ways. In 2008, Forbes included him in their list of hip-hop's biggest earners that year, noting his business ventures include a clothing line, an in-the-works reality TV show, and his own Convict Music imprint to be distributed by Interscope. I never knew that there was a planned Akon reality TV show. Apparently there were two, so I wanted to see if there was anything I could find about the concepts. It doesn't look like either of them actually started filming or any production. According to BET, one of the concepts was going to be something that was going to focus on Akon and his 3 wives. I couldn't find too much about that, but the second concept, which I did find a lot more about, was going to be something called My Brother's Keeper, in which Akon's look-alike brothers would pretend to be him and live lavishly, live the Akon life. According to quotes from another source, unnamed unfortunately, that someone brought up in their 2007 "Oh No They Didn't" post, so a genuine relic, the lonely hitmaker came up with the idea for the show, My Brother's Keeper, which follows his brothers as they travel around town posing as the singer and reaping the benefits that come with being a superstar. They are going around getting the VIP treatment. Girls, free food at restaurants, free everything, and everybody's falling for it, Akon said. It's a real life thing, which has got really out of hand in Atlanta, so I decided to take the situation and make it into my advantage by making a reality TV show out of it. Akon's brothers look alike. Like, I would believe that they are brothers. Well, they are. But going off of this, Akon has said that he once double booked a show and he had one of his brothers perform for him. And for clarity, the 2 brothers he's talking about, their names are Omar and Abu. Akon explained on the Bootleg Kev podcast. Boo used to fill in for me in shows. And my other brother, Omar, he would just debo, like straight take a show. I'll be in New York and next thing you know, I'm getting a flyer from Baltimore that I'm performing live. This nigga O would just book the show and keep the money. He wouldn't even tell, as if I'm not going to find out. He would go as me. O was straight gangsta about it. The audience would not know the difference. And when you see me and my brother separately, if you didn't see me in person, you would definitely say, okay, 1000%. Omar was running it up. To me, this is insane, especially Omar, the sibling, just like performing as you behind your back without permission. And if I was Akon, I would be slightly offended if my fans could not tell the difference between myself and an imposter. Maybe his shows are dark. I was also wondering, would it be worse for the sibling or the imposter to be a worse performer than you and ruin your reputation? Or would it be worse for them to be a better performer than you, so then when you actually perform as yourself, people are like, I don't know, I feel like he had more energy in those other clips that I saw from a separate show. He must be tired today. Meanwhile, it's a whole separate person. Also, I've never seen or been to an Akon show, so I'm not sure what all they entail, but I also think it's interesting that one of your siblings would know your show well enough to be able to replicate it. I could see them knowing your songs, knowing, oh, they do this little move at this point, but knowing the whole thing. But again, I don't think Akon's up there doing a whole entire dance number, so it might be easier than I'm thinking it is. But knowing this, I do think it's important context to this video because it's proof that Akon's got the grifting spirit in him, at least a little. Because I know we want to be like, it's not that deep, but this man has admitted that he's okay with letting people buy concert tickets to his concert when he's not even there. And that's another sort of checkpoint. I know these things are not super accurate, but for example, in 2010, Akon's estimated net worth was about $31 million, with him reportedly earning around $21 million that year. And as I mentioned, as his musical output tapered off, Akon started to gain this reputation as the mega philanthropist, usually in terms of something technology-based. For example, in 2014, Akon launched Akon Lighting Africa, meant to provide sustainable solar power to over 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa.
As an African, I always wanted to be in a position where I can come back and give back and be able to use my celebrity, use my success in a way where I can help people.
Et nous vous renforçons et nous vous appuyons. Voilà. Merci beaucoup.
Doing so would have benefits like reducing violent crime, allowing businesses to stay open later, and also allow students to study later into the night. And Akon was inspired to start this initiative because he spent a large part of his childhood living in Senegal, and the town he lived in didn't have electricity. A 2020 article from PV Magazine, and they cover a lot of media related to solar technology, things like that. They credited Akon Lighting Africa with providing solar-powered electricity to 25 different countries and roughly 28.8 million people who can now enjoy the same benefits of electricity that much of the world has enjoyed for decades. Other than Senegal, some of the countries Akon Lighting Africa has provided electricity to include Guinea, Niger, Sierra Leone, and Mali. PV Magazine claims that Akon was able to do this due to a $1 billion credit line with Chinese manufacturers of solar-powered products, so some sort of loan, and apparently they were thinking about using traditional fossil fuels, but the solar power was going to be cheaper and more sustainable. I saw another article saying that Akon was starting Akon Lighting America back in 2018, and I haven't seen anything else official about it. I did see he mentioned it in the 2022 interview, but I couldn't find an actual website for it. I found an Instagram account with one post, but who knows if it's official, who knows who made it, and then it looks like someone bought the .com URL and used it for their smoke shop or something. I do know my lighting, my electricity, it's not through Akon. So now let's get into the Akon City. I feel like those little tidbits of background information just want you to get a feel for where Akon may or may not be at when we talk about this next venture. In 2018, Akon City was announced intended to be in Senegal. Akon even said his plan was to eventually retire in the city, adding, "I don't like to use the word king of the city, but that's what it will turn out to be." Aside from renewable energy, financially the city would run on its own cryptocurrency called Akon. I'm not a crypto expert, but I've heard so many horror stories and scams regarding crypto that now anytime I hear about it, I'm on high alert. Akon, though, he said that he believed blockchain and crypto would be the savior of Africa because it would bring the power back to the people independent of the governments.
The problem with crypto is that everybody focus on the intricate details like that. And that's where you get confused, because the dollar will confuse you too if you sat there and you focus on that. Just know that it's another piece of currency like gold would be, right? Or anything that has value or that people trust to say, okay, that's worth something.
He planned for Akon to be available in all 54 African countries. Aside from just currency, Akon would also have a credit lending system as well as a digital wallet. At least for Akon City, I was trying to see if Akon would not just be the primary but the only accepted form of currency, because that seems like it should be or would be illegal, which was pointed out in several articles, and it seems like that was something even they were trying to work out a few years into the project. Akon's only response being, "We'll have it figured out by the time the city opens." So I guess he was technically correct in the end. Hate to say this, I don't hate to say it, I'm gonna say it. It reminded me of crop liens, or like when landowners would pay sharecroppers and plantation currencies so like they can never leave because they never make any real money that they can spend elsewhere. Which is why things like this are typically illegal across several countries, because if you're getting paid in this random currency that only spends in one place, you're trapped. Or like when you hear about companies paying their workers in credit, vouchers, gift cards that they can obviously only use at that establishment, illegal. According to the Akon site, though, it says, the Akon utility token is used within the entire Akon ecosystem. Whenever a transaction takes place, it's with Akon, cementing the token as the main means of transferring value and making purchases across all of the ecosystem's platforms, functions, and services. Partners will need to use the Akon utility token as the means to pay for their activity, whether it be a developer listing a DApp or a global brand looking to create marketing campaigns. In short, Akon represents the lion's share of transactional activity within the entire ecosystem, being the mandatory payment vehicle for a great deal of activities that can be undertaken by users. So that's giving, we might accept other money, but don't count on it. Come with your Akon. I wasn't exactly sure what the Akon ecosystem is, but I'm going to assume that at the very least, it's going to be everything within the Akon City, maybe other things since he planned for this to be in other countries in Africa, not just Senegal. In terms of Akon City, though, Akon initially planned for construction for Phase 1 to begin in March of 2019, and then Phase 2 would begin sometime in 2025. That didn't happen as planned. I'm not sure if they were still trying to work out the land, the boundaries, or what, but by January of 2020, Akon had announced that he'd finalized plans for the city with Senegal's president, and they'd secured about 2,000 acres for the city. And this would be pretty small for a city because, for example, it's only about 3.1 square miles, which is roughly the size of cities like Embudo, New Mexico, or Miles City, Montana. For further reference, Embudo is technically unincorporated, and I couldn't even find concrete population information. Miles City's population is just under 8,500 people. Seems Akon City was going to be in a great location because it is on the coast, but it's also about 5 minutes from Blaise Diagne International, which is Senegal's flagship airport, which makes a lot of sense if it wasn't part meant to be an attraction somewhere for tourists to visit, of course. Out of several things, obviously, my biggest gripe with this is that Akon City is such a boring name. I'm not saying anyone deserves a city, but if you build one, you should have to name it something cool. And historically, I guess this checks because so many places are just named in honor of the founder or someone that the founder liked. But Akon City is just meh. Anyway, Akon City was also branded a smart city since it would run on futuristic, vague, technology aside from the crypto. And the city has also been branded several places as a real-life Wakanda. According to Business Insider, the city would take $6 billion to build, which was being financed by a quote-unquote shadowy investor, who they described as a Kenyan entrepreneur with a mysterious past and a history being sued over allegations that he failed to repay debts. Though small, once completed, Akon City was intended to have a luxury resort, high-rise condos, a university, a marina, offices, a hospital, fire station, a stadium, theaters, and an artificial intelligence data center, amongst other things. So for obvious reason, construction for phase 1 didn't begin as planned in 2020, so Akon City was not completed in 2023. By December of 2022, Akon was claiming Akon City was 1,000% still happening, but a lot of people were not buying it.
Is it hard for you to like, because you know there's a lot of people who like say that like, if you watch, there's like many YouTube documentaries about your city and how it's like a big scam.
Right.
Do you care about the naysayers when you know the truth?
I don't care about that, because in the end, when the city's actually up, they're going to feel like assholes.
Yeah.
Journalists who went to the site noted that it still didn't even look like there were plans to start construction in 2023, since the site still looked like this. And that little pedestal and stone that you see, those were unveiled back in September 2020 when Akon first visited the site. So that's the progress they'd made in about 2 years. Despite this, the Senegalese Tourism Board, also known as SAPCO, they still expressed confidence in Akon City being built, and Akon announced the project had switched building firms since COVID had pushed everything back 2 years, but they were ready to get underway. I personally think the most genuine thing Akon said out of everything he said about the city was his regret in prematurely announcing the city, saying, "I would have gotten more things in place before promoting it," when asked if he had any regrets. He then went on to say, though, that he had confidence in all the skyscrapers being built because he was definitely going to achieve the impossible. We love an optimist. For those who were still dubious, Akon did say that those who invested in the project or as crypto who wanted out, they would be refunded with his own money if necessary. And they were given the option to either receive a refund of their original donation or receive an Akon MasterCard, which will have the value of their initial donation. This was noted in a BBC article. There were several BBC articles about this. They were on Akon's butt about Akon City. Anyway, they pointed out that Akon was likely worth at most $80 million, meaning not only would he lack the funds to build Akon City, hence the investors, but also likely wouldn't be able to afford to pay people back himself. That 80 million figure doesn't even mean that you have $80 million in the bank, even if you are worth that much. And even if, let's say, the $6 billion wasn't just investor funds, let's say it was $1 billion, $80 million is still not scratching that. At this point, so like 2022, 2023-ish, Akon City was still very clearly ambitiously planned to open in 2026, even if it was just the first phase. But one of the Senegalese locals told the BBC, "We thought we could work on it, but at this pace, maybe our children will. We remain hopeful for the project. We hope that our children will stay here to work." And obviously several of the locals, they were excited for this project, not just because of, Akon City, but if it had actually gone into effect, this would have created hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs for people to help build the city. So clearly by this point, people were calling Akon City a scam, saying Akon was just in it for the grift, and this project was never really feasible to begin with. News outlets seem to mainly be saying the same, that it was pretty obvious at this point that Akon's real-life Wakanda was still a far-off fantasy. And by 2024, the Times was reporting the Senegalese government even was telling Akon to get construction going, or they were going to take up to 90% of the land back. And several residents of Mbodiène, which is the official city in which that site exists, they were interviewed, some saying that they delayed plans of moving or looking for other work because they'd hoped to get an Akon City building job. For example, Felix Sene, age 27, said, "This Akon City project had given us hope for better days here, and now we have to figure out what to do with our lives." But still, Akon and his people were maintaining the city would now open in 2028, hoping phase 1 would be complete by then, which is 3 years after initially the entire thing was meant to be completed. So at this point, they were hoping phase 1 and phase 2 would be complete by 2035. A few months later, in August of 2024, YouTuber KNT visited the Akon City construction site, and the video is him walking around this beautiful grassy field.
But I think, unfortunately, this is the only structure in this Akon City. This entire place is Akon City. And over here is the only structure that is currently available.
And just recently, as of July of 2025, it's now been confirmed that Akon City has officially been scrapped. Who'd have thunk? Sergine Mamadou Mboup, who is the president of SAPCO, which I mentioned is Senegal's tourism board, she announced, "The Akon City project no longer exists. Fortunately, an agreement has been reached between SAPCO and the entrepreneur. What he's preparing with us is a realistic project, which SAPCO will fully support." So I guess all isn't lost, but I am curious to know how much money was. I also found that Akon had been sued back in 2021 by music exec and business partner Devin Stevens for about $3 to $4 million. Sources varied, but it was from a prior legal agreement that I do believe was unrelated. But he wanted Akon's assets to be frozen so that he could recover this money, claiming that Akon was running a Ponzi scheme with this Akon City and had other shady business dealings going on, and that was probably part of the reason that Akon wasn't paying him back. I'm not sure exactly what came of this lawsuit. I couldn't find anywhere that Akon was ordered to pay Devin any money, but several articles talking about this or talking about the Akon City, you will see them also call it a Ponzi scheme, a crypto Ponzi scheme, a crypto Ponzi city, several variations. And briefly put, a Ponzi scheme is when you have people invest in a company, a business. The company never really makes a profit enough to pay back those investors or run off the money the business is actually making. So you're not paying investors back with money that you actually increased with their investments. What you're doing instead is recruiting new investors and then paying the old investors with that money. So you're not really making so much money as you are just allowing it to change hands. So if multiple investors want to pull out and they want their money back at the same time, or maybe even just one or two people want really big investments back, you don't have it! And at first I couldn't find anything that Akon said or even Sopko about what the new, more feasible plan for Akon City is going to be. But I did see just yesterday that it seems most likely that they're going to put $1 billion resort there instead. So cheaper than Akon City, which also reports are now saying it was costing $7.7 billion as compared to the initial $6 billion. And I'm also not sure if Akon is connected to this new resort. I did look to see if Acoin still exists though. Like if Akon was just like rip Akon City, I am keeping my crypto coin. But from what I found, it seems like it got delisted from exchange sites after the news that the city was scrapped. And if it's any indicator, I found articles from 2024 claiming that Acoin failed before it was even confirmed that Akon City was no more. And clicking around, it does seem like the Acoin website still works, but I didn't want to click further. I didn't want to enter anything, so I didn't want to accidentally buy or do some shit. I don't want any Acoin. Of course, as always, I'm eager to hear your thoughts and feelings. My main thought was, as cool as the renderings are to look at, it just never seemed feasible to begin with. Cool and feasible are two completely different things often. Like, it all kind of sounded like the plans of someone who has big ideas but has absolutely no idea on how any of these things actually work logistically, because even him admitting that he didn't know how crypto worked in an interview clip that I included in the video, and I also read him saying several times, like, I'm not the crypto guy, I don't know how that works, I'll hire people who do, which I believe makes sense, but I do think you need a base level understanding of something even if you're going to hire an expert. Because if he had, I think he would have realized a lot of this stuff just doesn't sound like possible. And that's often why these grifts and scams are so interesting to me, because it's like, who is giving these people money? And it's like a lot of the times we do, or a lot of the times we believe that these people are in it for the good or in it for, you know, to actually make some change simply because they are a celebrity. So we give them perceived authority that obviously is often pretty unearned. Something else I was wondering in terms of Akon Lighting Africa, I'm not gonna say whether the foundation, the company is net good, net bad, but I didn't find any scandals. I didn't find any terrible things about it. I could be wrong, because how often do we think these charities companies are doing good things and we find out that horrible things were happening behind the scenes? But my point is, I didn't find any of that publicly, so I'm wondering if a lot of people are like, oh, Akon's a decent guy, he's helping give a lot of people in Africa and several different countries lighting resources, help change their lives in a positive way. Of course, this is going to be the guy who's going to have a city that's actually going to continue to help more people. So I am wondering, or I would think that it's kind of logical to assume that on top of Akon being a celebrity, having this track record of doing some good, being a philanthropist, if that would make people more inclined to believe that Akon City is something that could have been fully realized or something that Akon genuinely wanted to do to help people, and then it just got a little too ambitious. So I'm not sure, because to me it just screams vanity project, because I would think, why do you need your own city? Couldn't you just help people in the existing cities? Like, you just want Akon City. But yes, thoughts, opinions, comments, all that good stuff down below, the way we can chat as we always do. Another thought I had, I'm like, is Akon the first person to probably start their own city? Is he even the first like pop culture music figure to attempt that? I don't know, but I do want to look into it. As always, thank you so very much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you can stick around for more. Also, if you'd like to become a channel member and get early access to videos, the link is in the description. And again, thank you so very much for watching. I love you all so very much, and we'll see you so very soon. Bye-bye.